Welcome to Horticulture, where a group of extension professionals and plant people talk about the business, production, and joy of planting seeds and helping them grow. Join us as we explore the culture of horticulture. Hello, hello. How's everybody doing today? How are we feeling?
Good.
Are we enjoying cool
I'm feeling the fall vibes for
fall
real.
vibes?
In
Love
Kentucky,
it.
at the point of this recording, it's been amazing.
Definitely feels like fall now.
Oh,
we
yeah.
hope all of you listening are also getting some delicious fall vibes, whether that be the weather or via pumpkin spice latte. That is 100% up to you if you are into that kind of thing. So
Why would you not be into that kind of thing? I don't know.
I don't know. Some people might say apple is superior, but I digress. So which reminds me, speaking of food, which is usually my question is related around food because who else am I? But I was recently somewhere where I had some really great snacks provided, and I was wondering, and with Savannah is our guest today, we're gonna pose this to her first, and then we'll let her introduce herself.
Wait. What were the snacks that were provided?
Well, hold on.
Okay, sorry. I was hooked. You had
There's
me
a certain
hooked.
amount of secrecy here.
Now you're letting me off the hook.
First, my question is...
Okay, sorry.
When you are somewhere and there's snacks provided, what is that snack that like you're always pumped about? Like you see it and you're like, made. I don't care what else is here. This is great. So Savannah, what is your snack of choice if you could have anything?
Okay, I think if we're talking packaged snacks, Rice Krispie treats.
That's a
Win.
good one.
Oh, that's good.
Absolutely
solid.
win.
Terrible.
I know
wins.
why they were on the trip list.
I've traveled with Savannah, and she is a great snack packer. So, yeah, highly recommend traveling with Savannah on for the snacks, strictly for them. But Jessica, how about you?
I like all the snacks. Like,
It doesn't have to be
if it's
packaged. Just like something you're like always like pumped.
I don't
to
know.
see.
What popped in my head right now was like those. Are they Garditos? What are they called? Right? Where it's like the Chex Mix, but
Oh
it's
yeah,
not.
Mhm.
Yeah,
yeah, the little rye
Yeah.
chips.
yeah.
Yeah, it's got the
Those
little
are
rye.
so good.
Yeah.
Little
Jessica and I
pretzel
always
twists.
split those. Another great
Classic.
snack person to travel with, Jessica.
Oh,
right?
thank you.
We already know the answer, but please tell the group.
No, what I'm
I
going
don't know
for
the
here,
answer.
you may be, well, not surprised, but I do a lot of beef jerky individual packages at my
Okay.
meetings, and there'll be a little bowl with just beef jerky in it. But no, Alexis,
and
it is
we
not
mean-
pumpkin spice latte.
Oh no, I was gonna say cheesy poofs. I'm pretty sure.
Oh,
Jessica
Oh yeah, I would
also.
say I would have lost a lot of money because I would have
I
said
only
Yeah.
eat those out of the tub, Alexis. I thought we were kind of going on the theme of individual
Oh,
packages.
you mean things I have to have
Yeah.
individually? Yeah, I don't
No,
share the poops.
I had to. I was going to say cheesy poofs, but they come best in tubs. So no. I'm thinking individual packages of snacks.
Okay,
So.
okay.
the tubs are
Beef
far
jerky.
superior.
Yes, the tubs are superior. Yes,
Brett, what about you?
Well, so my role here is to make things unnecessarily existential. That's my role on the podcast.
Yes, we all do.
Well,
we all
like
know.
where does the snack end and the meal begin?
Oh, Brett.
Stop it,
willpower,
Brett.
Brett. Willpower.
Because let's say hold on one second. Hold on. Let's just say I get a little plate of like some chips and queso. Is that a snack? Is that
you
too
believe in yourself,
expensive?
it is.
So for me, a snack is something that I can eat and walk around with to go do what I need to do. So I mean, if
I'm a
chips and
talented man,
queso,
so that's going to be a pretty big
Like
Venn
Vienna
diagram.
sausages are a snack.
like
to me.
it's
you
just like a little something you're like, and then you just go do what you need to do. Like it's just like a quick
a
little.
meat stick there, Jessica. Yeah,
A little meat stick.
Just for the record, this is not helping me at all because I can walk and eat a lot of things. I can a lot of things.
I love that. At
You know
the
what,
fair,
Brett?
the
I think a
walkie
snack-
But
Is
let's
what it
let's
means
hear
to
what yours
you.
is.
I'll respect the spirit of the prompt.
Chips and
And
queso.
I'll say I really enjoy a soft pretzel.
Okay.
Ooh,
Oh,
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Is it warmed or?
Yeah.
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 That's
Yeah,
the
Do
only
you
kind of
need a
pretzel.
dipping sauce though with it?
Preferably two, like
2 to 3 sauces.
a mustard and a nacho cheese.
Okay.
But
Okay.
if I'm, if it's real minimalist, I don't need a sauce at all as long as it has some salt on it.
I need the carb. We're all good. So mine was so I like rolled up to the snack table, right? Like, what do we got here this weekend? And popped open a lid, and what was sitting there but little Baby Bell cheeses.
Oh,
And I'm just That's usually not something you see at a snack table, and it
And
really
that's like
hit
the little
me.
mini wheel
Yeah, the little
thing
mini
that's like
wheels.
in
Yeah,
wax or
like
something.
yeah, no sponsorship here. I'm just saying, they just happen to
Yeah,
be
I
that
mean,
brand.
holler at us.
And it was just it was a light. It was a light in my life in that moment. was
those
the
get
little wheel of
warm in your
cheese.
pocket. If you stick them in your pocket, Alexis, they do get warm, so you have to be careful, okay?
I'm not going to leave it sitting anywhere long enough for that to be a problem.
You
So.
Put it in your
talk like
pocket,
you
come
got 'em
back
in
later.
there.
You could have a little
Alexis
nachos and queso.
Yes, there you
did
go.
share with me how you could make those little cheese wheels into like s'mores, right?
Yeah.
Like a savory s'mores
Savory
with
s'more.
cheese. Like
It's
you
like a little Baby Bell
It's
cheese
instead
really
of a
weird on
in
a
between some like
marshmallow.
wheat thins or Triscuits with a little
Some,
bit
like,
of like a
hot
pepper
pepper
jelly.
jelly. Yeah.
Ooh,
Okay, I thought you
Yeah.
guys were using those with the marshmallows. I was like, something's wrong with you.
fusion.
No, the cheese is the marshmallow.
Yes.
In this
Okay,
In
thank
this
you for that
situation.
qualification. I
Yeah.
was a little
Toasted cheese
nervous.
wheel. You
Yeah,
put it on a
toasted
stick
cheese.
and
Yeah, you
kind
put the
of.
wheel on the stick and you put it in the fire and let it get a little melty.
Whoa, little
Yeah,
Doesn't that
muffin
sound
Stick a
good?
hot dog on the end there
We
too.
have
Sounds
not
awesome.
tried this actually, but we think it would be good.
This
If it-
was something we found on Instagram.
It
That's what we
results
found on the
in
internet.
Haven't even done it?
flaming lava.
No,
Look,
but
I
we're going
watched a
to.
video
Yeah, I was under
about
the
it, Brad,
impression
so
that
Anything
you
I
said
can
it.
do to
actually-
support you making this real, you let me know.
Yeah.
We're gonna
I'll
do
drop
it.
everything
So.
to do.
I
Fire
think we need to
extinguisher, I'm
do
there.
some research report back. So
Try all
Yeah.
the
But anyways,
varieties of cheese.
we
I might
are
go right now. You guys can
we
do the
are
podcast.
while we're not talking necessarily about snacks, although I guess some of the things you get at an auction could be snack worthy, we are
Okay.
specifically talking about produce auction sales today, and we have the wonderful Savannah on with us. Savannah, tell us about yourself.
Hey, everybody. I've been a listener of the podcast for a while, but it's my
Oh.
first time on, which is cool. I
First time caller, long time listener.
Yeah, I do feel that way. I have been an extension associate in the Department of Ag Econ for over 4 years now, going on my 5th year. One thing that I'm responsible for in my job is working with the produce auctions to post our or their price reports on the Center for Crop Diversification's website. We also compile 3-year average summary reports. One will come out at the end of this year that will include data from 2021, 2022, and 2023. Those are really cool. They're pretty lengthy, but really cool. We get to look at 16 popular crops that go through the 2 largest produce auctions in the state, which are Fairview in southwestern Kentucky, and then the Lincoln produce auction, which is about 50 miles south of Lexington, in just Lincoln County, obviously.
Crab
But Fairview
Orchard,
is
yeah.
in Christian County. There was a new auction added, actually, wasn't included in the report, will be this year, was added last year, and also in Western Kentucky, labeled the Western Kentucky Produce Auction. They're located in Trigg County. In addition to those 3, we also have a produce auction in Hart County and Casey County. All of these auctions have several sale dates every year. And Alexis, you mentioned the snack thing. Some of the produce auctions are actually selling more than just produce, right? So fruits, vegetables obviously go through the produce auction, but Lincoln County specifically has a bunch of baked goods that go through.
Yes,
Also, ornamental decorations. They're really
wow.
branching out. And flowers are a big one also.
Yep.
A lot of our mums that are seen at certified farm markets and roadside stands are coming out of produce auctions, both in Kentucky and crossing borders, especially at the produce auction in Fairview. We have some people that come up from Nashville and the northern Tennessee area to buy stuff, which is really cool. But yeah, so we have 6 produce auctions in the state. Something that the Center for Crop Diversification does is post their price reports online. So if you go to our website, look under price reports, click Kentucky Produce Auction Price Reports, you'll see all 6 auctions listed there, along with the latest version of that 3-year average prices and quantities pub. Each price report will look a little different based on how the auction has them compiled, but they will just list the items sold that day, in what unit size, and then high, average, and low price.
You said some of the auctions offer specialty items. That's really interesting to me because I heard baked goods, and I know Brett is an aficionado of like pretzels. But on those specialty items, I'm just really curious because when I think of produce auctions, I think of buyers that are buying commercially kind of larger quantities. But like on those specialty items, are they large quantity items per piece, or how is that done? Do you know?
Actually, what's really cool about the auction also is that they come out with their own annual market report. So
Mm-hmm.
some of these things that I'm able to kind of dish out really easily are pulled from there. Oh, my little mic fell over.
Good save.
So
Good save.
Baked goods was something that I was kind of really looking into last year. Just seeing like it on the weekly sale data that came in. We in Lincoln County, let's see, because they're really cool. They will divide their yearly report into produce, like just a sheet for produce, and then everything else is on another page. So they'll have all their hanging baskets, perennials, potted stuff. I'm looking to see how much baked goods went through, but I'm not finding it very easily on here. But and I don't know if I have an actual picture of one of something going through, but cookies, brownies is what
all the
comes to
good
mind.
stuff. But it sounds like the main thing at all of
Pies.
these auctions is more like vegetables and then fruit products. That's the more typical mainstream products at all the auctions, I guess. That isn't it? Then
Yeah, I'd say big items that are coming through the auction are going to be our number 1 and 2 tomatoes. Corn by the dozen is a good one. Even it's sold in more than a dozen quantity, but reported as dozens. But corn, also big things like watermelon, pumpkins, gourds, things like that. That can be harder to sell individually at the farmer's market, or just large items that are difficult to transport for maybe a small farmer's market booth. Have a nice place here at the auction.
So I feel like that leads me into a good question, because until I actually like went to an auction, it's like, what a produce auction is, right? Like everybody can kind of like make an inference of what that is.
I
but
don't think so. I don't.
No?
It seems
Okay. Well,
extremely.
then
you may need to
tell
paint a
us-
little bit of a picture. You
tell
guys,
us about that, Savannah. Tell us about a basic produce auction.
Yeah. Okay. So, at the produce auction, there are buyers and growers, right? And so we're going to mostly be talking about the growers, but there are people there that are buying stuff, and they're important too. But how it kind of works
Obviously.
is
Important to the farmers, right?
Someone's got to buy the stuff.
Someone's gonna buy it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like if I grew a bunch of watermelon and I wanted to go sell it at the produce auction, there isn't large barriers to entry, but I would preferably go check one out first before you just go all chips in. But the produce auction kind of works. You sign up for a grower number, and so that number is associated with any product that you bring to the produce auction. And their sales usually start on time. And they have a calendar. Each produce auction has a calendar of what items are for sale, like annual seasonal plants is what I'm trying to say. But there are some specific like plug sales that will happen at the beginning of the year. Maybe a little too much in the weeds, so I'm gonna back up.
That's okay. Yeah. So you've got a bunch of watermelons, and you want to take them to the auction, and so yeah.
So you just go, you sign up for a grower number. That number is associated with the items that you bring in. The auctions are run mostly by the Amish communities. So it's not going to be super electronic, right? It's going to be an in-person, face-to-face kind of transaction. You will load all of your items out onto the concrete floor, is what's most common, in a specific place that section of your stuff will have not your name, but your grower number attached to it. And then how much quantity is in your, let's call it a square of space, right? Mm-hmm. And so all of that that you bring will get sold together. So the auctioneer will go around and they will sell each lot or square together at a time. Mm-hmm. Then once everything is sold, you would, as the grower, go get your check or money from the office once everything has been sold. And it goes through pretty fast. I actually went to one. I've been a few times, but I went to one in Fairview at the beginning of the summer, and the auctioneer rolls stuff off. So you really have to be paying attention. Mm-hmm. But everything pretty much is sold. The ideas behind like quantity, you are going to sell more in one lot than you would maybe at the farmer's market, right? So when we go to the farmer's market, we have a mix of stuff we bring. Here, people do kind of focus on specific bigger quantity items. But the idea of like product quality, packaging, and making sure things are together nicely and neatly is still important, right, across all marketplaces.
Does the market managers work with producers? Like if I'm a producer and I'm new, I'm like, well, how many watermelons or what's the quality standards? Do the managers work with them on that?
Yeah. So yes and no. If you ask them a specific question, yes, they will have the answer to it. Gotcha. We, as part of our 3-year average report, there is a table in there that says that lists out what unit size everything is sold in, and that it pretty much stays like that throughout the whole season. For example, corn is sold in dozen quantity quants, but there's more than a dozen in like one bag.
Yeah.
But if you're interested in a specific crop, they can help you out. Or they have, when we're thinking about bigger things like pumpkins, watermelon, they do have a bin count. Off the top of my head, I can't remember how many are in a bin. But
like
also
50 pumpkins or something.
Yeah. There will be, and there's a distinction between our medium and large pumpkins and then our smaller ones. Obviously, the smaller ones you can fit more in a bin, but those are all going to be very similar to like the standard unit of measurement.
And there are some cases. Oh, go ahead, Jessica.
Yeah, I was going to say, we talked about the grower a little bit, but quickly about those buyers, just so people know, there's a whole variety of buyers there, right? Like, so it's not just like commercial people, but you as a homeowner can even go to these auctions and participate, right?
Yeah, that's very true. The only caveat is that you might end up buying a lot of stuff because you can't break a lot into pieces or anything like that. But yeah, as a homeowner, I could go, and if I was interested in buying canning tomatoes, I could go and buy them there for a relatively cheaper cost than maybe at the farmer's market or something like that. It really depends on, what your end use is. Or like if I was a school teacher and I wanted to buy little pumpkins for a painting activity, I could go and buy a large amount. Buyers for the produce auction are also, people with roadside stands, people that do food service. There's a wide mix of people there. Both are, everyday people like us, and then people who are buying food. They have order buying also, which isn't, I don't know if it's available at every auction, but there are enough buyers in, at least Fairview does it, that they have order buying as a service as well. Thinking about newer growers getting into the produce auction, when we think about packaging, Fairview at the very least, and I'm not sure off the top of my head if other auctions are doing this, but they have some packaging available for growers to purchase.
That's a really common question we get, because it's always kind of daunting when they look in like Monty or one of the commercial, and they say they see they have to buy 1,000 lot of whatever package, and that's a big deal. So some of the auctions do work with producers as far as on purchasing packages through the auction. Is that how that works?
Yes. Yeah. So
Yeah.
they can and I don't remember if they have to take it all with them or if the produce auction will store it on site, but they do have those large wax boxes. And last year I saw the tomato boxes and some other cardboard boxes were actually labeled with a Fairview produce auction, which was some nice marketing on their end. But yes, they have bulk packaging purchasing options for growers who are interested in taking advantage of that, which is really cool.
Something I want to touch on that you mentioned is the the importance of these auctions, or the role that these auctions play in the resale market within Kentucky, within the local food economy, because there are, in fact, a good number of larger commercial buyers who are bringing literal, semi trucks to buy large volumes that end up going into grocery stores or other kinds of retail outlets and other places. But as you mentioned, a lot of them, they're going into these, I go to the auction, I buy 150 pounds of tomatoes, and then I go and sell it at a roadside stand, and it's a local product, but I'm sitting there, I'm taking the time to do it, I'm selling smaller volumes, etc. And it makes the auctions, in some cases, market non grata. They're a bad word for some people because they think of them as these low price, value suppressing markets or something like that. They actually play a really important role in supplying volume. But it's an interesting, one of the things I wanted to ask you, Savannah, maybe you can see if you can find some spot prices for what stuff's going for, but like, just to give us a ballpark on something like tomatoes or something like, I don't know, any other crop, how much, there's a difference, right, between what it sells for at a produce auction and what it sells for at a farmer's market, for instance?
Yeah. So if I'm looking at the Fairview report from August 30th, corn, for example, sweet corn, sold, let's see, a dozen, average price. So for quantity measures, they sold 1,025 dozens of corn in
Wow.
that one day, Friday, August 30th. In 2024, average price was $3.34. So if we compare that to your Brett, your Kentucky Farmers Market price report for roughly the same date range, I'm looking at the one that was posted on September 2nd. But at the Fayette County Farmers Market, sweet corn was between a low of $7, high of $9
Per dozen.
Yeah,
so in
per
that
dozen.
case, you're looking at a 200%, roughly 200% premium.
Yeah.
What about tomatoes?
Okay, so that we
Number
got
number one, red tomatoes.
Yeah, Fairview #1 red tomatoes, 20-pound boxes. Average price was $30.21. Let me see if I can scroll down.
So that's roughly $1.50 a pound.
Yes.
And that's for graded, really high quality. So at a farmer's market, depending on the market, you're looking at two at the low end, 250, 3, 4 plus dollars per pound. So $3.50 a pound for at some of our urban markets, and so that's again over a 200% or sorry, over 100% premium. Over doubling the price from that market to the other, and I think that you have to keep in mind, just like if you're doing that at your farm. Like if you're deciding between selling wholesale and selling retail, there's a lot of expenses associated with going and selling a pound at a time at a farmer's market, but you get that premium, and it's that trade-off. And so I understand some of the frustrations people have with the auctions, or with particularly those who buy from the auctions and then perhaps sell that product as if they themselves grew it, which is just kind of a deceptive marketing technique, which isn't really cool. But I do think overall there's a role for things like places like the auctions, where somebody wants to go and take and sell 500 pounds of tomatoes at a time, and okay, we'll take a lower price, that's fine. But yeah, just that is an interesting dynamic that we don't necessarily talk about a ton.
Yeah, I think that there's a nice place for both. Something that maybe kind of frames the auction well is that auctions are good for growers who maybe want to spend less time marketing. They don't want to be at the farmers market every
Or they don't have the
Wednesday.
labor. Yeah.
Yeah, or Saturday,
Yeah.
Saturday, Sunday, back to back markets, or markets in multiple counties. When they can go to the auction on our main schedule is Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Fairview has a few extra sale dates in there, but it's kind of nice because growers can make the decision on what kind of marketplace works best for them with their time constraints, labor constraints, things like that. When we think about the larger items like watermelon or pumpkins, how much can you really bring to the farmer's market on Saturday morning compared to the produce auction, especially when you have all of your stuff that might be ready all at once.
Mm-hmm.
It's like
Yeah,
high volume, low price, or low price, high volume. I mean, it's not mutually exclusive, but it kind of is. That seems like that's how the marketing channels work. The more time you put into marketing, the closer you get direct to consumer, the higher price you can command. Whereas there's a certain convenience factor. If you're assigning what a value to your labor and you count that in, it gives you a much clearer picture on the time that it takes going to a farmer's market. If you take that into account, it kind of changes the considerations. But anytime we're working with producers and they're trying to decide which scale they want to jump in at, that's one of the first things we talk about is, retail versus wholesale and the volume that both kind of typically involve themselves with. So yeah,
And
that's where we start with a lot of discussion.
some of those producers can do both, right? Can choose to do
Mm-hmm.
both, where
Yeah.
they're selling at a market and they have excess tomatoes, or they know maybe
Mhm.
they just do one market during the week, but they would really have enough for more, but they don't really have that time to commit to a market. Then they have that auction as their backup to move that product. Or like you mentioned several times about, moving those larger items, it's hard to haul pumpkins and watermelons to a farmer's market,
Mm-hmm.
right? So being able to have an alternative selling location for that produce so it's not going to
Yeah.
waste. So yeah, there's a good
Yeah.
balance between the two, just the market and the
Mm.
the auction.
Seems like I
Yeah.
saw some really interesting information in one of the publications about like the percentage of growers that sell like 50% or less, or didn't I see that in some of UK's publications? Some really nuanced information on the fact that most growers don't sell like 100% of their stuff all at one place or the other.
Yeah, I can't remember which publication that is out of, but
Yeah.
it's true. It's nice to, the growers that are selling in this marketplace are still differentiating just like any other grower would, and still thinking about quality and packaging of their products. And even a lot
Mhm.
of them are doing season extension, right? That idea of getting the first tomato to the farmer's market also applies at the produce auction, right? Because the people who are buying it's kind of from another perspective, but the people who are buying those tomatoes at the produce auction from growers, they want to have the first tomato from the spring in whatever outlet they are moving their product to. So those kind of ideas and similarities are overlapping.
Mhm. Yeah.
So this next comment will seem like a non sequitur, but just stay with me, and I promise there'll be a little bit of a payoff.
Starts with
Um,
pretzels.
But so our recent in our ag economics department, I recently named chair of our department back when she was interviewing for the job. Shout out Dr. Aslahan Spalding. Welcome to ag economics. She did an exercise where she had you close our eyes and try to imagine a farmer. I'm talking about a farmer out in the field, and how would you describe that person? And, in our department, which has a large presence of white men, I'm sure there were a lot of white men imagined in the heads of those involved. But we opened our eyes and there's pictures of women and people of color. And I think it's an interesting avenue to consider, who is contributing to agriculture, who are the farmers, who are doing those things. So that's a little aside. But in the case of a produce auction, if you're imagining, a John Deere hat and Levi's, that may be off base for a lot of the producers and a lot of the folks who are involved in these. So there's a particular community that's involved heavily with establishing the produce auctions, running them, and a lot of the people who are selling to them. And that's these plain community members. And they have a lot of very unique advantages in their production. And they also have some challenges and things. And I think that also contributes to, so in the case of the produce auction, a lot of those growers, those plain community, this is like Amish, Mennonite, you're imagining the straw hats and the suspenders and the
horse and buggy
bonnet.
Yeah, and the unique accent, and they speak this variation of German Dutch to each other. It's pretty awesome. But a lot of them are located in the immediate vicinity around where the produce auction is, and so there is like a real like base of growers who are selling into these places, and it is their primary market channel. And then you also do have what they would describe as the English farmers, the folks who are typical, American, look like a typical American farmer or typical American Kentucky resident or something. I don't know what that means exactly, but who also come and sell and buy from those places. And I think it's a unique aspect. If somebody hasn't experienced a produce auction, that's a big part of the culture and the overall aesthetic of the place, is that you have this kind of mixing of groups. And but also a lot of those plain community growers, for one reason or another, some of them technological, aren't going to be able to take pumpkins all the way to Lexington. And so they need a way to sell that stuff, and they're local and close by, and they're saving on transportation costs and all that kind of stuff. But that's just another angle, just realizing there's some people out there who this is the first time they've ever even heard of a produce auction.
Yeah, and even thinking about sometimes we have growers that we talk to that say that they hate spending time on social media. They don't want to put the time into marketing, but this could serve as a way where they could spend less time marketing. Not that you should be doing some type of marketing, but maybe it's not on social media, and maybe it's through the produce auction, where your grower number is going to be listed on your product, but not your farm name, and you're not posting images on Instagram. Oh, I'm going to be at the farmer's market, come check out my booth. It's you're bringing your stuff to the produce auction for the sale that starts at 10 a.m. and they roll through the sale, and then you're done.
I often wonder when these produce auctions get started. You guys have both, everyone's mentioned both the grower side and the auction side, but the chicken and egg thing, I mean, how do you get a new like auction when that comes around and you're trying to bring that about? And Brett mentioned, a lot of times the auctions are situated around, or growers are situated around the auction and vice versa. But I mean, I'm just assuming there's kind of a base assumption as let's say you're a buyer when you come, that there's going to be a base level of produce there. And on the flip side of that, if you're a grower, you're assuming there's going to be enough buyers to purchase what you have that day. So auctions to me have just always been really interesting in the balance that they strike. And I'm always fascinated by what makes some auctions be successful in the long run. And then there's always cases where you have an auction that may not do well and, they close up shop. But auctions are always interesting to me on how the successful ones do it year in and year out, strike that balance between growers and buyers. And that's always been a really fascinating thing to me in kind of a broad perspective.
Well, and I think, thinking about how we get more people accessing local food, this creates an easier opportunity for a lot of, if you think about like the restaurant industry, or even people who are putting together food for a school. We think about the farm to school system, which, maybe we'll do an episode on, because that's very interesting the way that all works. But there's opportunities for people to still come by local food that's not traveled, across many, many states, supporting the community in that way, but in a way that works for their system, and a little bit more in line with what they would do for breads or things like that. And so, that's to me a really vital role of an auction, is just one more way to make local food available to the Kentucky community or wherever that community is. But then, like, thinking as someone who like has a business as well. And I know there's like people who do jams and jellies, and they might not be able to make or grow enough tomatoes, or maybe they're only doing the spices and they want to add in something else, add a pear jelly into their jelly repertoire, and they can go buy pears and expand those, and everybody's helping everyone. If you're doing a floral design workshop and you want to do pumpkins, and you can go buy a big stock of pumpkins, you're supporting another farmer. You're not going to just a box store to go buy a bunch of pumpkins. And so it's just kind of thinking about all the different types of buyers and how this sort of makes a lot of that accessible, local food more accessible to them, and they're not just going to the farmer's market and shopping.
And to kind of build on like exactly what you're saying, I don't know about the Fairview one, but I know in Lincoln County they have their special like Mother's Day plant sale, right? And they have like a
I was
special
wondering about
fall sale
flowers.
and
Yeah.
a special, like, I think they do like a holiday one now. But so you're advertising for like I feel like your non-traditional buyers that way, because that's when they're like breaking stuff off into smaller lots for people. But they're getting that exposure, just like Alexis just talked about. They're getting the exposure to see those other products that are there. And who knows, maybe that person does work at a school and like puts two and two together, like, oh, this would be a great opportunity to buy, large amounts of produce, or a restaurant owner, or, by, advertising to these other, or I guess I would say our non-traditional buyers, you're bringing in, that
Or
advertisement there.
Jessica, you have a spouse that likes to go and buy large
Oh, yeah.
quantities of
The
stuff.
pumpkin fairy. He should be active soon. He goes and buys a bin of pumpkins and mums and delivers them to our neighbors and everyone, and my nieces and nephews get all excited when they see his truck coming down the road with his bin of pumpkins.
So when did this person, which just happens to be Jessica's spouse, when did he find out that you could go directly? Did he know way back? That's fascinating
Well,
to me. When did he find this out?
both of us used to work at the horticulture research farm in college, and we got exposure to the auction that way, because the research farm would have all their excess produce at the time back. Things were different, I guess, and they would take that and sell that produce, and we would get to go down there and got to experience that. So, so he's known about it for a while, and as you all know, I'm not allowed to grow pumpkins at our farm. So that's the alternative. He just goes and
Gets
gets them that way.
a bin of
Yeah,
pumpkin. So
a bin of pumpkins
So it's
and
just a
shares them.
way to keep your neighbors happy, especially if you're putting down a lot of compost or fish emulsion. Maybe you go buy them some pumpkins, and you can get them cheap at the auction. So
I noticed on those price reports, Savannah, the prices do vary during the season, like everything else. What I know seasonality probably drives that, but the number of buyers, all of that probably feeds into that. Is that correct? As far as the variation in the price levels throughout the season?
Yeah. I mean, similar to how it works in other marketplaces, there is seasonality that comes with all the crops. So, actually, a good visual for it, the publication that I mentioned earlier, the 3-year average price and quantity report, actually looks at 16 crops that are really the most popular ones that come through the auction. Data from Lincoln and Fairview, our two largest auctions in the state. Each crop is broken down into a page, and that page has a graph for Lincoln County, a graph for Fairview, and a combined graph. But it breaks down quantity that came in through the week, and then how price happened along the season. So it kind of shows how that early season tomato is a nice price point to get. Or you can look at the low parts in the season, which that is a lot attributed to too much stuff in the market, right? So at one point, there's going to be too many pumpkins, and the great price for them is going to go down, right? And then especially, after October 31st, right? No one is buying pumpkins after Halloween, and so you can also see holiday effects, right, on specific crops. But yeah, it does kind of work the same way. But you can see that visually on the 3-year price report that's available on our website. There will be the new one coming out later this year, hopefully to in time for a fruit and veg conference. But it's kind of cool. Something we also added to this version of the publication, as opposed to years prior, is the pack size. So how things are packaged, season length, and then we also compared prices and quantities between 2020, 2021, and 2022. These are going to be like weighted averages, and there's a little manipulation that went into that. But we actually could see that for most crops, the value of price went up. Even if maybe quantity didn't go up, or growers weren't selling more, they at least for most crops had a better price point, right? So for example, this one that I pulled up right here, half bushel of beans, average price in 2020 was $15.26. In 2022, it was $18.88. And this one actually went up in quantity also. But that's kind of a neat thing that we added this year, or this came out earlier this year. But it's been kind of nice. Growers are able to look at a publication like this and kind of have some both visuals on price, and then we have that little chart on the side.
I have a dumb question. So I know like some types of auctions have like a starting price where things go. Is that the case in a produce auction? Like they start at an X value, or is it literally start at 0?
I believe they have a starting value.
Okay.
I don't know. I think it's based off the average price from the week prior, but maybe I shouldn't have said that out loud on the microphone. No. But they do have a starting price. But it was really cool, and you can go and look around the auction and not like buy anything. I've been a few times
just go
to
get a
kind
pie
of just
if you want.
see how it works. Yeah.
It's just a cool experience.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
if you don't have to go, like you just said, to buy. Just go and be a fly on the wall and watch all of it. And
Yeah. A lot
who
of times
knows
they're
what
like
you-
open air, at least the ones I've been to. And so like, people are kind of coming and going from all directions. And
Do you have to get a bidder number as an individual? Is that what a person would do that just wants to look around but may see a pie that they want to buy or whatever? Is that what you do as a consumer? You do what when you go there?
Yeah. So any type of buyer, whether it's an average homeowner or someone who's buying for large quantities, you will just get a buyer number and then pay for your stuff before you leave.
Gotcha.
Something I did want to note, sometimes there are some smaller quantities of stuff, maybe stuff that didn't make a lot, or kind of some odds and ends stuff. So sometimes you can go to the produce auction and get lucky and get
only 20
quantities.
pretzels in that lot, Brett. There you go.
Well, in some auctions,
Perfect.
it just kind of depends on some of the auctions will break it down into smaller quantities, and that might change year to year. So you could check in with because there's some of them where you bid on like we go to the tomato section and we say, okay, per pound or per box price, and I say, okay, 30, I win it at $31 for per box, and they say, how many boxes do you want? And I say, I'll take 4 boxes, and then they'll reopen the bidding again for the next per box price until it's all gone. And so it just varies, and you want to make sure you understand what's going on before you start just wildly bidding and accidentally buy two pallets of tomatoes.
Yes.
You could end up with like, how many marigolds did I have this year in my yard? I have like over 100. I mean, I like marigolds, but that was a Mother's Day present I got. The pumpkin fairy went to the auction in the spring.
The pumpkin fairy still
so
learning.
We got lots of marigolds
the
everywhere.
early flight of the pumpkin
was
fairy.
that a case where you thought you were buying one quantity but were really bidding on another quantity?
So
Gotcha,
you definitely got to be careful with that, because you think, oh, I'm just going to get these 3 flats of something, and it's really 5, or 3 flats is already a lot of marigolds, but so yeah.
Another thing I wanted to just quickly mention, auctions have been one of the early, like one of the main groups that has been able to access some of those larger markets, like what everybody's kind of talked about. And those larger markets sometimes really care about food safety certifications and other stuff like that. And so I would say that the auctions have played a real leadership role in the food safety training, education, et cetera, in the state. And I know, Jessica, you were kind of saying that you'd experienced that too, or seen that at least.
Yeah, when we had a lot of changes roll out a couple years ago, with food safety and produce best practices training that also led into FSMA, all of that. The auctions became like hubs for these trainings, and the different auctions hosted the trainings throughout, the down season during the winter months, to get as many growers trained and up to date on these food safety protocols. And some of the auctions will send out letters and updates about things. And I've seen before where even in their letters, they're talking about different food safety issues, things that have happened, and to like warn others to like look out for this. And then other trainings, that are coming up.
Yeah,
to
it's like a
handle things.
community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that also go? Do you guys know? Do they do anything like I don't know? Ever host any events like private pesticide applicators, things like that? I mean, just to support their growers. I'm assuming there might be opportunities for things like that. I'm not for sure.
Yeah, they definitely do a
Do they?
lot
Okay,
of
awesome.
on-site auction trainings for their growers, because
Great.
it's like from the extension or regulator or whoever's side, it's like a reliable audience. You go down. I've gone down there and talked about markets or pricing back when I was doing more of that, and it's like, oh, you're gonna have like 40 or 50 people, no problem.
That's
Which is
awesome. Yeah, and
pretty
they're all
cool.
commercial people for the most part, I'd
Yeah, and
say.
they're like
Yeah.
thinking about the same, on the
Awesome.
same lines. And the other thing I'll mention, somebody brought this up earlier, and again, this predates most of Savannah's handling of some of this data, but the COVID effect, or the COVID reality, and it's another, again, I'm not overly defensive of the auctions. I don't think there are some people who are critical of them, and I'm like, these are my friends, okay, but during COVID, they served as a crucial source for produce, both as a market outlet for the producers, which is great, but also, if you remember the experience of going to the grocery store and the shelves were bare of one thing or another just because those supply chains got shut down. They were this kind of buffer to some of our supply chain issues particularly with the world of produce. And as a result, they basically set dollar sales records like every year starting 2020 then to 2021. And it wasn't because their volume increased, it was because their prices were increasing. And that since it's an auction, there is this really direct
Supply and
relationship
demand,
between how strong the demand is and how high the prices go. But they were a really interesting part of that, in the middle of all the, quote unquote, supply chain disruptions, and exposing the vulnerability and whatnot of some of our distribution networks. They kept on rocking and rolling. At some point, it was like kind of early on, we don't really know what's going on, and they were able to stay open because they were agricultural businesses. And but yeah, that was just another part of their story that really is interesting, to think about them as part of that, like what Alexis was describing as this local food ecosystem.
They're so important, and they add to the fabric and the tapestry of local food systems. And that's something else that's fascinated me is, some states have, even more auctions than Kentucky, but it's such a cool thing. The farmers market, of course, that whole process there and that whole system is awesome, but this is kind of a different thing that we're talking about with the volume and the pricing that we've talked about during this episode. But it's so cool. You're right, Brett. I think about that a lot, in kind of what that adds to the state of Kentucky for both producers and buyers, and how all of that relates to local food systems. It definitely does add a lot, and I thought a lot about that during COVID, when I heard anecdotally that there was more like consumers that were going and approaching auctions, as there was fears about food security or insecurity in that case. So yeah, it's cool. Produce auctions at that time really, I think, elevated themselves in one aspect.
Yeah, people getting laid off, and they would their response was to try to open a roadside stand, and they would go and buy from the auction, and it was kind of this because it was, March, April. By that point, you were a little late in the game to be thinking about growing your own stuff. And so it was a wild time in so many ways, but we worked with the auctions a lot during that period and just tried to hold on tight. But it was, while other places were closing and it was a bad situation, it was actually really good years for the auctions, financially at least. So.
And it seems like the format of those lended themselves very well, when the lockdown happened, because most of those are open air, aren't they? I mean, for those that haven't visited one, what do they look like at auction physically? They're just a big open shed with a concrete floor,
pavilion,
typically?
yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. Just like large concrete floor. There usually is some kind of overhead covering, but not like solid walls. So some protection from the rain. But it is really cool.
I'd say all told, Fairview has more than a football field under cover at this point.
Wow.
Yeah.
I would say like their main floor, and then they've added other. Wouldn't you say, Savannah? It's pretty big.
It's very large. It's really cool though. It's a little bit of a drive here from Lexington, but definitely something really, really cool to check out if you're close by. The one in Lincoln County, I think, was the last one that I visited. Also open. Sometimes they will have stuff like flowers on the ground, so maybe not on the concrete, but definitely anything that's food will be on the concrete floor. But it is really cool. And the auction also does help load and unload stuff. So they have forklifts that are driving around loading stuff out of growers, transportation units, and then into the semi trucks or the trucks of the buyers too. So that's kind of also helpful. Some forklift safety certified people buzzing around.
We hope.
Yeah, that's we'll see. But no, it's cool. The produce auction in 2022, all of them besides the newest one in Trigg County, they recorded over $10 million in sales, right?
Wow.
And so they're big players. A lot of people might not be as familiar with them, but they're big players here. So
awesome. Well, cool. I learned a little bit of something about produce auctions, like every time somebody talks about them, and now I'm like, do we do like a group trip? Because let's go with the pumpkin fairy and go visit.
Let's go get some. Yeah,
watch him buy pumpkins
and not spend all of our money
and go. I like it. I'm on board with this. I endorse this.
I mean,
message.
once again, there's pie usually
and
available.
Donuts.
Yeah, like let's
fresh
just go
flowers
eat
and
while
all the
we
things, yeah.
watch the pumpkin fairy work. That's a good day to me. So anyways, well, if you enjoyed this episode, please give us a follow on wherever you're listening to this podcast. If you've got any questions about growing things, about produce auctions, any of that, we'll put Savannah's contact information in the show notes, but you can also shoot us an email, hortculturepodcast@l.uky.edu, and we will make sure your question gets answered by someone. You can also follow us on Instagram at hortculturepodcast, and we are available on there. And just kind of as a reminder that we have an episode that comes out, and you may see a funny picture or a corgi in it or Brett next to a tree. Like, you never know what's going to be thrown up there. So definitely go check it out and leave us a review if you are so inclined. But I think that does it for us today. And so we hope that as we grow this podcast, you all grow with us. Join us next time.